a essência da profissão. Além do compromisso com a ética e a competência profissional do coach, a ICF tem um compromisso com a comunidade. Então, nessa semana, nós lançamos duas iniciativas pro bono, prestem bem atenção. Todos vocês que estão participando têm direito a concorrer a um sorteio de uma sessão de coaching que vai apoiar vocês na coleta dos aprendizados. A Ângela vai colocar o link no chat agora, no final vai repetir mais vezes. Então, quem quiser ganhar de brinde uma sessão de coaching com um associado da ICF, por favor, preencha esse formulário que o link está a seguir. E para os coaches também associados, além de apoiar os participantes na consolidação do aprendizado, estão abertas inscrições para o programa Pro Bono, através da parceria do Comitê de Responsabilidade Social com o Ensina Brasil. Então, nós convidamos você, coach associado à ICF, para ser voluntário neste programa. A Ensina Brasil desenvolve lideranças que atuam como professores em escolas públicas de comunidades vulneráveis, por 2 anos, preparando-os para liderar mudanças em diversos setores. Mas essa informação não para aí, ela começa com você. Imagine, então, você, coach, ser parte dessa jornada de impacto social, apoiando líderes em formação, ajudando-os a superar desafios e potencializar seu propósito de transformar realidades. A gente tem resultados muito interessantes, então estimulamos você. A Ângela vai colocar o link também aí no chat. Vamos falar um pouquinho dos nossos reconhecimentos e a governança da semana, né? Quem já teve ontem vai novamente, né, saber aí dos nossos patrocinadores. Eu peço à Ângela, por gentileza, colocar o evento, né, das nossas empresas patrocinadoras. Então, a Semana Internacional do Coach no Brasil, ela está sendo viabilizada pelos nossos parceiros estratégicos. Então, um agradecimento especial ao patrocinador Ouro, Inner Development People, o patrocinador Prata, LLH, e os apoiadores institucionais, as ABRHs do Rio Grande do Sul, do Paraná e de São Paulo. Muito obrigada a vocês. E vamos assistir um vídeo da Inner, que é o nosso patrocinador Ouro, um minutinho, e aí nós retomamos.
Dentro de cada pessoa há um potencial esperando para se transformar em potência. Uma força silenciosa que nos impulsiona rumo ao desenvolvimento. E é isso que a Inner faz há mais de 2 décadas, ajudando a transformar líderes e equipes de muitas das maiores empresas do Brasil e do mundo em profissionais cada vez melhores. Nossa missão é que você realize a sua. Afinal, quando um ser humano se desenvolve, as empresas não voltam mais a ser o que eram. E essa talvez seja a revolução mais bonita que existe. Inner, Developing People.
Obrigada, Ângela. Então, retomando, agora com muito prazer e muita alegria, a gente apresenta para vocês as 7 mulheres que são responsáveis por esta semana. A Ana Mussi, que é a nossa presidente que está aqui presente, nos convidou sob a direção da Carol Souto, aqui em terceiro lugar, que é a líder do comitê da Semana Internacional do Coach. Então, nós temos a Ângela Barreto, que está comigo hoje, Andréa Aragão, que esteve há pouquinho, Carol nos coordenando, Daniela Piscinato, que é a diretora de marketing, a Fernanda Birk, que eu já vi aqui também, Marta Magnus e Rosângela Pedrosa. Nós trabalhamos muito, mas com muita dedicação, com muita alegria, com muita aprendizagem, de vez em quando com muito estresse, para estar aqui hoje oferecendo essa semana para vocês, que mesmo como participante tem sido muito gratificante. Obrigada a todas vocês, tá bom? Então vamos lá, aquelas coisas operacionais, né? Para garantir a nossa conformidade com a qualidade da sessão, solicitamos muita atenção. Gravação de IA, né? Qualquer inteligência artificial, pedimos a vocês que desliguem. Esse evento está sendo gravado pela ICF, será disponibilizado nos nossos canais de YouTube e, conforme os nossos acordos éticos e de direitos autorais, é estritamente proibido o uso de robôs ou softwares de inteligência artificial para transcrição ou captura de dados. Certifiquem-se que tais aplicativos estejam desativados. O link com a programação completa e o acesso às nossas redes também vai ser colocado no chat. Ainda dá tempo de se candidatar e se inscreverem para as outras sessões. Convidem pessoas das redes de vocês, tá? E essa sessão de hoje conta com a tradução simultânea da Fabiana, e a Ângela vai colocar as instruções aí, né? Quem quiser, para ficar mais tranquilo, fica só, tem um globozinho, fica no canal em português e vai estar sendo traduzido para os professores. Eles falarão em inglês, vocês estando no português ouvirão a nossa tradutora, tá bom? A nossa sessão terminará pontualmente às 10 horas, tá? Perguntas, pedimos para vocês escreverem no chat, e não sei se daremos conta de responder a todas, mas os últimos minutos vão ser dedicados às perguntas. Ângela e eu faremos uma seleção, se tiver muitas, e tentaremos juntar algumas delas. Quem é da ICF tem direito a CCEU, então no final terá um link também para vocês preencherem, ok? Vamos começar porque temos um tempo curto. Então, agora eu dou boas-vindas, né, à Tatiana Emberich e ao Scott Chambers. Muito obrigada pela presença de vocês. Com certeza vai ser um espaço muito valioso para a comunidade brasileira. A Tatiana Emberich é fundadora da We Consult HR, executiva sênior de RH por mais de 20 anos de experiência como diretora global em empresas brasileiras e multinacionais. Dedicada a empoderar pessoas, desenvolver líderes e construir culturas mais humanas, inclusivas e psicologicamente seguras. Ela é representante exclusiva da Fearless Organization SCAN na América Latina, em parceria com a doutora Amy Edmondson. Ela também atua como representante do Lean in Circle no Brasil, apoiando o empoderamento e desenvolvimento das mulheres por meio dessa fundação global. E temos o prazer de receber Scott Chambers, executivo sênior, com mais de 30 anos de experiência em desenvolvimento de liderança e gestão, cofundador e sócio-gerente da... Como é que eu vou falar isso, Tati? Siga Change, parceira estratégica global da Fearless Organization. Especialista em coaching de equipes, desenvolvimento de talentos e facilitação de workshops, com foco em segurança psicológica e liderança inclusiva. Master Practitioner do Fearless Organization SCAN, profissional e instrutor Cantor, apoiando líderes e equipes na construção de mentalidade de crescimento e culturas destemidas. Mais uma vez, obrigada, e passo a palavra para você, Tatiana, que comece, e em seguida para o Scott.
Thank you very much, Rosângela. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, and I think some people also good evening. So please feel very welcome for our first session for this day.
Vocês estão ouvindo?
First of all, I would like to warmly and thank you, ICF, for this wonderful opportunity to be here discussing so important topic and timely topic as well, which is psychology safety in organization. It's truly for me a pleasure to be here with this group of so many professionals in the area that I'm so passionate about it. And also I know that each of you is very keen to leadership development, coaching, and also creating a healthier and more human centered workplace. So it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. As Rosângela said, my name is Tatiana Emerick, but please feel free to call me Tati. As we are Brazilians, we love to be friendly, so this is my nickname. I am the founder and the CEO of We Consult HR, the first hub in Latin America for the global HR solutions. And I am also honored, as Rosângela said, to represent FIR's organization SCAN in Latin America. Today, I'm very especially honored to welcome someone that I deeply admire and respect, and also which is my lovely coach, my professor, and the most important piece, my partner and my friend. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Scott Chamber. As Rosângela said, he's global executive, leadership expert, and one of the official represents FIR's organization methodology worldwide with partnership of Dr. Amy and also Sanders. Scott has been working globally, supporting organizations as leaders in building psychology safety environments, and then foster innovation, collaboration, learning, and also sustainable performance, as you see now in our presentation. Scott, thank you so much to trust me to being here today. I would love to give you now a space to welcome our participants and share a few open words. So feel free.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm introduction and welcome. And I'm delighted to be here and grateful to the ICF for the opportunity to speak to such a global audience. I noticed as people were checking in, there's many time zones, many temperatures, and many areas covered. So excited to be talking about this topic, which has been close to my heart now for a number of years, and which I see in the global economy, in the world's economy, becoming increasingly important to drive performance and to drive innovation and creativity. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Scott. So let's start, right? Can you please, Angela, move to the next slide? In the next slide, you see, yes, thank you, this lovely image, which I like very much. And myself, as executive of human resources in this past almost 25 years, I already have been in this picture before. Scott, can you explain a little bit more to colleagues that are listening us right now, the image?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is, I think this captures perhaps the experience of many people in the world, the organizational worlds. So we have a boss sitting at the end of the table asking everybody who's in favor of the proposition, the idea, the decision that's being put forward. Everybody's putting their hands up to suggest that they are in favor, but when we see what they're thinking, we can see that perhaps they're not as enthusiastic as they might appear to be. And I guess it captures psychological safety. It's what we're really feeling and thinking about what's going on. And this boss is missing the opportunity to hear from these people what their concerns are, what their ideas are, and what their concerns and challenges are.
Yeah, thank you. And Scott, what does this mean for you and for Amy, the psychology safety? And who created, now I already answer, probably, the term globally?
Well, to be fair, should we put the next slide up? I think so. Amy Edmondson has probably had the biggest influence on the use of the term and the wide adoption of the idea. So there's a build in that slide, I think. But originally, the very first track we can find on the expression psychological safety is a humanistic psychologist called Carl Rogers back in 1954. So the idea, if you like, has been around for a while. I think Amy's contribution, which was kind of in the 2000s, 1999 and 2018, first one when she published her paper, firmly landing the concept of psychological safety in the team context. And then in 2018, she published the book, The Fearless Organization. You can see many different copies or versions of it, being a global bestseller, and has popularized the concept. Probably the other people we'll talk about later. There's a global case study from an organization that we all know and love. Google, and we'll talk a bit about them in terms of how they popularized the term as well. So I think the build, I could just click, is it Angela that's got
Angela, can you click a little bit again? Thank you.
So I wanted just to land the definition. So one of the challenges with psychological safety is it's now been around for a long time, and that means that people are interpreting it in different ways. So when Tatiana and I are talking about psychological safety, we're talking about a belief that you will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. So a very deliberate list, everything from creativity and idea generation right the way through to admitting when something's gone wrong and inviting your colleagues and team to help you resolve the problem that's occurred.
And Amy developed all the book, right, Scott? And super happy to see that we also have it in Portuguese that calls Organização Sem Medo. So please feel to look at that. It's very important. And just taking one opportunity, Rosangela, the team is saying here during the chat that Scott doesn't have the pin button. So if you can put Scott as well as in the pin button, not only me, you'll be good. Thank you.
Eu coloquei, mas aí a Tatiana sai do PIN.
Yeah, so maybe we change a little bit when I am talking and then put the pin in me and then after Scott. Yeah, good.
Okay.
So thank you, Scott, so much to explain that because it's very important.
They're only asking to see me because they can't see me. Once you've seen me, they'll turn the camera off.
Scott, as you know, we have the legislation in Brazil called NR1. You saw that when you came to Brazil last year. And due to this recent update, there has been a lot of discussion about the psychology, social psychology aspects that connect with the psychology safety as well. However, as I told you, and you also had the opportunity to see and hear as well, we have been hearing many misconceptions, conceptions and incorrect interpretations, right? So, can you please help us to clarify the concept further that you just explained now and with the vision as well of Dr. Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's again, that's been part of my journey with this concept. 6 years ago, when I first started talking to teams and organizations about psychological safety, most people hadn't heard of it. So there was a bit of education to be done. But now the problem is people have heard of it and it has been misunderstood. So if you just click onto the next slide, these are 6 common misunderstandings that have emerged as the term psychological safety has been pushed and distributed across the world. So psychological safety, as I said, is a belief that you can speak out without being punished or humiliated. What it doesn't mean is that everybody's nice to everybody. It's not a niceness thing. Don't get me wrong, we are all in favor of people being kind to each other. But sometimes tough messages and tough issues need to be confronted, and that can be not nice. It also doesn't mean getting your own way. So this concept of psychological safety mean everybody's opinion is equally valid and equally valuable. What it is everybody's opinion is equally welcome. We want to hear perspectives, we want to hear personal experience and ideas and questions. But it doesn't mean that everything you say will be followed up with and will be committed to. So it's not getting your own way all the time. It doesn't mean job security. That was something that Google found out when it first had to make redundancies. Oh, we've gone forward a slide. First time in its history it made redundancies, having been very successful in pushing and introducing psychological safety into the organization. And people complained that by losing their jobs and by people being made redundant, they were losing their psychological safety. Yeah, job security is separate to psychological safety. The fact that they could have those conversations in the open is really positive and a sign that psychological safety was present. The fourth one is one I hear all the time is, oh, we can either have psychological safety or you can have performance. It's a trade-off. It's absolutely not. I would argue exactly the opposite. You will limit your performance if you don't have psychological safety. You're putting a brake on your organizational and personal effectiveness if you're not creating psychologically safe workplaces. Also, lots of organizations say, oh, yes, we have a psychological safety policy, Scott. It's okay. It's not a policy. It's behavior. It's organizational behavior. It's a very specific set of behaviors, and it's sets of behaviors that can be learned and implemented. But it's not a policy that you can just mandate. Scott, be more psychologically safe. And then the last one, which again, a bit like the nice one, we're not against a top-down approach. In fact, a top-down approach can be very helpful. Senior leaders buying into the sense of psychological safety and creating that in their organizations is very positive. But psychological safety can be introduced at any level in the organization. Any team can choose to create its own psychological safety. I talk about it as a microclimate. The team can be psychologically safe, even if the organization is not. So there's a lot of misconceptions. I often see or hear people talking about safe space being the same as psychological safety. Again, that's a different concept. These things are interrelated, but they're not the same. So when you're talking about psychological safety, it's really important to be clear what we're talking about. Team construct, the capacity to speak up without being punished and humiliated. The space for interpersonal candor, to take interpersonal risks and know that your colleagues will welcome that because it's delivered with good intent.
Thank you so much to share that and educate it as well, all the audience, what really means, right? So if you can go, Angela, for the next slide, connect what you just said right now, Scott, about performance, right? Dr. Amy, during her research, as we know, she shared that if you have a high level of psychology safety, disconnect, as you said, a high level performance, right? And this is very interesting because when I was in the corporate environment, all my clients was saying to me, internal clients was saying to me that, Tachi, but what is the balance? How much the percentage that I should have of psychology safety and performance, right? Because they thought that someone of them thought that psychology safety was very soft topic and not necessarily connected with performance. Can you explain to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I guess it's by putting those two words together, and I always slightly smile. The very first conversation I had with Amy Edmondson back in 2020, she said, "Yeah, do you think the words psychological safety, are those the right words?" It kind of was a bit too late by the time she was asking me, but they tend to, as you suggested in your question, lead you down a softer kind of behavioral soft skills thing. In my experience, psychological safety is hard work. You know, the most psychologically safe teams that I've worked with tend to be very good at conflict, which means conflict is present in their meetings. They're not comfortable, easygoing, everybody being polite. And you need, you need in teams, you need some variety and diversity of thinking in order to generate novelty and creativity. So it's the performance element. If you look at the next slide, there's some very direct links to certain areas of performance. So again, this is research. If you look up Amy Edmondson, look at her research, you'll see not just Amy. So this has been proven so many times. It's extraordinary. But psychological safety increases levels of innovation. Yeah, because you're accessing more ideas, more creativity. It's the difference between a single computer and a network of computers. When the network comes together, the ideas are generated and the collaboration is possible. I can spark ideas in your head and you can spark ideas in mine. There's a higher level of quality because there's an open feedback channel. So we're testing and we're learning and we're seeing what's working and not working, and we're open to feedback. So we increase our quality of work. It was actually, I think it was William Deming, who was probably one of the most famous quality people. One of his principles was to drive fear out in order to create this environment of feedback. Increased team learning. If people are sharing their concerns and their ideas and their mistakes, then the team has a capacity to learn. If we hide all of these things away, then the team is missing a high percentage of the data. And then finally, employee well-being. Although psychological safety doesn't directly address employee well-being, by working as a team, and you will all have had that in your work experience, you are more supported, you're more collaborative, you're more able to take the pressure. There's not a single point of failure. So you get much higher levels of collaboration and therefore support and engagement and satisfaction.
And it's very interesting for me that not so much people knows about Amy, right? But everybody knows about the Aristoteles project from Google. It's very interesting when I'm talking with senior leaders and about this topic. And of course, we share all these benefits that psychology safety provide. If Angela, you can go to the next slide, please. And then Scott, can you kindly talk about the Google project? Because this is, I think, we resonated very well with the people that's listening us.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that has accelerated people's acceptance of psychological safety, and Amy would be the first to agree, was Project Aristotle. So Project Aristotle, for those of you who don't know, is a long-term, I think it was between check my notes, 2012 and 2016. Google tried to answer the question, why are some teams more effective than others? And being an analytics firm, which Google fundamentally was, they did a analytical research program, 180 teams, 200 interviews, 250 plus different attributes. And then they tried to correlate that to performance. Okay, so what is it that gives a team a high performance ability? And one of the researchers happened to be in touch with Amy's research, and they took some of those 250 attributes and said, actually, if you put those together, and those are all showing that there's a positive impact on performance, those are what is called psychological safety. So Aristotle didn't use psychological safety in its research, but found it when they were trying to make sense of the data that they had gathered. And this little graphic on the left, the green graphic, that is directly from Google, from Rework, which is their internal consultancy operation. And they identified in Google there were 5 things that increased team performance. And the number one was psychological safety. And the reason why it's number one and in a different color in their graphic is because it is a gateway. Without psychological safety, then the other 4 factors don't have the same impact. So you need psychological safety as a foundation to build the other pieces on. I'm not sure that all the other pieces would apply to all organizations. I'm sure you work with companies that have their different way of looking at these things. But what became really apparent with Aristotle was that psychological safety was a foundation to work on. And with psychologically safe teams, they got more sales, they got more creativity and ideas. They were more effective when they looked at performance metrics. And importantly, and we'll touch on this later in the presentation, people with high psychological safety are far less likely to leave an organization.
And this one in the previous slide, I think really give for the people that's listeners and they work in organization and they need to talk about that and start the first conversation helps a lot, right, Scott, to explain to the leaders what's the importance is and why we should start working with that. Not only because the legislation requires now, but really because it's important, as you said, it's the foundation for to be a successful or even more successful teams. But now, as we spoke so far about benefits and the project, I'm very keen to hear from you. What are the risks if we don't have the psychology safety? Or if the psychology safety is in a level below, not necessarily in a medium or high level in a team? So can you talk a little bit about that? And Angela, if you can move to the next slide, it would be perfect.
I think it's we need to click forward 2 slides. So I'm also keeping half an eye. So
Yeah, can you go to the next one? Yeah.
So this is the slide that I can't read, but I'm sure not a number of you can. That was a piece of the more recent Gallup research, which said that 45% of people reported feeling stressed, 17 to 18% reported feeling angry, and 20 to 25% felt sad the previous day. So this is data from last year's global workplace research, but this is an output. So the thing about engagement is an output of that. It's like a financial report. It tells you what happened last year, last quarter, last month, This is what's happened in 2025. The beauty of psychological safety is it's a leading indicator, so it tells you what is happening. Again, we'll talk about that later. So that that data is disturbing in itself. But if you then click forward, and I think there's a few builds in, so I just build the slide if you would, Angela. So there's I think it's 4 clicks. This is a test, isn't it? Is it 3 or 4? So these are case studies that are less famous than the Google one. And again, if you want to Google or research these, then a global one. First time I came to Brazil was to do some work with Nokia when they were present in Sao Paulo. So who killed Nokia? Most of you might remember the fact that everybody in the day had a Nokia mobile phone, and now hardly anybody has a Nokia mobile phone. What went wrong? And I was lucky enough to consult with him, as I mentioned. And one of the things that happened is that the communication between the people doing the work and the leaders of the organization got disconnected. So the people who knew what was happening in the marketplace, knew what the technology could do, knew what was in demand, lost touch with senior leadership, and therefore decisions were made which weren't informed by the real world. Wells Fargo financial services company, they were putting performance pressure on their people without psychological safety. So they were putting demands on their branches to open accounts. There was a bonus for opening a number of accounts, and a problem if you didn't open enough accounts. So back in 2013, people working in those branches were opening fake accounts, maybe for their children, maybe for fictional characters. So they created lots of fake accounts. The result of that was a $3 billion scandal, and a lot of fallout for the Wells Fargo organization. Probably more famous is Volkswagen's Dieselgate, which was when, again, somebody in the organization thought they were doing the right thing, what their bosses would want, but they were faking the results of tests. And again, the communication breakdown meant that wasn't visible, that the decisions were made at the wrong level, and mistakes were made. And finally, doing these quickly, France Telecom. I shouldn't do too fast, because this particular one, actually, the pressure that was put on people in France Telecom to perform ended up in suicides, and bosses of France Telecom actually went to jail because of the perceived moral harassment. So the beauty of psychological safety, it doesn't mean that Nokia would have survived, and Wells Fargo wouldn't have made mistakes, or Volkswagen wouldn't produce cars which emitted too much diesel. What it means is the organization has free flow of communication to allow the decisions that are being made to be informed by the best people who know the data. The next slide carries one last final example. I won't, again, if you just click forward one slide.
Angela, can you put the next one, please? Thank you. You can click again.
So this is an example which again some of you may have followed. This was back in March 2019 and 2020, when the 737 MAX, a new Boeing aeroplane, was globally grounded after 2 extraordinary catastrophic crashes, which killed over 300 people. That's a tragedy in itself, that it should never have happened. But Bloomberg actually did a post-event inquiry into how this happened, and they had access to internal emails. And I think there's 3 examples of the emails that were circulating internally. So you can see that people knew. You wouldn't put your family on a MAX. They'd be shocked if the Federal Aviation Authority passes this turd, forgive the language. This is a joke. This aeroplane is ridiculous. So within the organization, people knew there was a problem. But because of an absence of psychological safety, that knowledge was hidden away, hidden in the back office, and not used to inform the decisions that needed to be made. So the absence of psychological safety means we are leading companies, we are managing companies, we're managing teams without the visibility of what's really going on.
And all these cases that you are sharing, it's very, very shock. But it's important for the people understanding that we can have, of course, less impact like these cases and can happen every single day, right?
Yeah.
Someone which could give an amazing idea for a solution for a customer, for example, because doesn't have a great place for with the psychology safety there, uh, doesn't share, and then that idea you not to be showing, not to be improving the solution, right? Or if someone have a not a good relationship with the leadership, and because it's afraid of, they don't talk with HR or different channels about that, and keep suffering in the situation that this person is. So it's not necessary all these big impacts. The idea here of the big impacts is to demonstrate to each of you that listeners what can happen in if we don't have the psychology safety there, but could be low impacts as well. In the Amy book that we shared before, you can see that as well. Different cases that happened in the hospital where she did her research and in the beginning of 1990. And then you can see and read a little bit more. And as I'm talking about Amy research, Scott, I remember that one of insights that she shared connecting with her during her research with the hospital teams, it was very, very important when everything started, right? Was her first idea when she started the research. Can you explain to us a little bit this idea? And Angela, if you can kindly move to the next slide. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this is a I'll try and keep it brief, but it's an important story because it kind of this is where Amy first really came across psychological safety and understood what this speak up culture meant. So she was doing research again, similar to Google, looking at what makes teams high performing and what may be getting in the way, and she was looking specifically at hospital teams, and she found in the research a counterintuitive result that the teams that were higher performing, higher performance in a hospital, you'll probably know, is people getting better and getting better quickly, so speed and completeness of recovery. That the teams that were doing most successfully at that were reporting more errors. So if you click to the next slide, it shows you the table of teams in the research that she did. So this is the rank order of the team. So Memorial 1 was the highest performing team. Memorial 3 was the lowest performing team. Again, one click and there's a reveal.
Angela, can you click again, please?
And then this is the reported error rate. So you can see Memorial 3 is reporting 1/10 of the number of errors, whereas the highest performing team is doing 10 times as many errors. So that was counterintuitive. In fact, so much so she went round and did the research again to check that that wasn't a mistake. And the reality was, this is when she describes it as a aha moment or a moment of the blinding obvious. It's not that they were making more mistakes. It's simply that they were reporting them. And in reporting them, they gave themselves the opportunity to resolve them and prevent them happening again. If we hide our mistakes, then guess what? Somebody will make the same mistake tomorrow, and somebody will make the same mistake the day after. So the openness of communication about what was going wrong allowed the team to deal with it and continue to improve. And guess what? It also encouraged people to be open about what was going on. So that's why they reported more errors, so that the team performance could improve.
But Scott, if you agree with me, it's not necessary a natural, sorry, behavior of human being, right? I remember when I was a child, and I think I told you that I was not good at that time talking in English, right? I didn't know so much. So I remember when I was in my classroom with my colleagues, when the teacher was calling student by student, when I was getting my moment, I changed my chair with my another colleague for a don't answer because I was afraid of to answer something wrong and be ashamed, right?
Yeah.
So why for us is not so natural to do that? What's going on? What, especially when we are in a professional environment, right? But as I said, this could happen since was as a child. So Angela, can you move to the next slide, please? And I'm very keen to hear from that, Scott, with you.
Yeah, so this is kind of maybe the slightly annoying thing about psychological safety. So again, it's not naturally occurring. So unless we put the effort in, it is unlikely that our team will naturally create psychological safety. So if you click to the next slide, there's a number of kind of basic human personality characteristics that block our capacity to create psychological safety in our interpersonal relationships. So next slide.
Next slide, Angela, please.
Oh,
Another
again,
one.
for the build. There we go. So again, I hope if you're listening to this, you'll recognize that we don't, in any of our professional work, we don't want to look ignorant. We don't want to look stupid. We don't want to look as if we don't know what's going on. And we know if we ask a question, then maybe then we're going to look ignorant. So we don't ask questions. We don't want to admit weaknesses and mistakes because we don't want to appear incompetent. If I have to ask for help or ask for how to do this, then I may be judged to be unable to do my job very well. If Tatiana and I are working on a project together and she's got some ideas about how to execute that, I may not share my ideas because it might feel like I'm invading her space, that I'm being intrusive on her ideas. I'm trying to interfere with something that's already going on. And there is always somebody in a team who might be seen as negative. So if I'm the one that's always saying, well, what about this or what about that, pointing out concerns and mistakes, then I might get characterized as the negative person in the team. All of these things, perfectly natural, positive human behaviors, mean that we're less likely to speak up. We're less likely to ask questions, admit mistakes, express concerns, offer ideas, and critique what other people are doing. So it's kind of naturally in us. Both childhood, which your story is a great example of, childhood experiences, but also evolutionary experiences. You don't want to be the weakest link in a team.
Yeah, yeah. And if we can move to the next slide, Angela, and connect what you just said right now, Scott, we need to be courage, right?
Yes.
To talk about it, to expose ourselves, and sometimes it's very difficult to see how much that can benefit myself or not, right? So
Yes.
it's very hard. I fully agree with you. And come back and again here, talking about performance, right, and accountability and psychology safety. I remember that you said to me that it's not a trade-off, right? So you should have the both, probably. So can you explain to us a little bit in the next slide, Angela, if you can put? I love this graphic because for me it's very simple to see the impact, especially when you explain, Scott. So
Well,
can you put all the graphic, Angela? You can click in all them, please.
so the 4 boxes will appear with enough clicks. It's thank you.
Thank you.
So, sorry, excuse me. So this is a false dilemma that lots of senior leaders challenge us with. So this all very well, Corso on psychological safety. It sounds like a great thing. However, at the end of the day, I'm accountable for performance, for delivery, for shareholders, for stock prices, etc. So how do I get this balance right? And as I say, that's a false choice. These two are 100% compatible. So if we only have accountability and focus on performance, then you get the bottom right box. You get that anxiety, you get burnout, you get people constantly worrying about whether they're going to achieve the goals and targets that they've been set. If you go to the top left, you've got comfort and coasting, where you've got high psychological safety, but no accountability, no performance drive. Then everybody's coasting, and it's quite nice for a while, but people very quickly become bored. In the bottom left, you've got a combination of low psychological safety and low accountability. that people are probably checked out. We might get a chance to talk about that in a little while. So what you really want is high psychological safety and high accountability, high performance accountability, because that's where you get into this learning zone, the learning and performance zone, where not only are you trying to deliver performance, but you're doing it in a way that encourages other people to get on board with it, that you're encouraging people to share their concerns, share their feedback, offer their ideas, join in the creativity and collaboration process to drive performance. We're not assuming we know all the answers. If anything about today's world that is certain is that the answers for today's problems aren't the same as yesterday's problems. So by having this openness to shared learning, to shared collaboration, to the creativity that comes from people working together to problem solve, then that's the thing that's going to drive performance in any organization.
For me, this is on top of you just said, for me, this graphic, it's very helpful to map as well when you are inside of a corporate environment, for example, or supporting a client and you know the people there, to map potentially where they are and what should be the strategy, right, that we can go. So explains very well. As you said, it's not easy to be and go to the learning performance space. Doesn't happen every day and every hour, but definitely should be our goal, right? Should be where we should be positioned. Yeah, so I really love that. So thank you so much for that point. And as we are talking about this topic, as you know, the FIRS organization did last year research globally with the companies that we serve globally as well. And this research that we just have the results right now, two topics that I found very, very important to share with this audience, right? The first one is very connected with the apathy and indifference box, which is the loneliness topic. And I think it's very connected as well with the generation that we are having now. I see that from my children. And the second point, it's really about the costs generated of psychology safety, right? If you don't have that in the workplace. And this data is very important as well for the business and for they can understand that the impact that can have if we don't have the psychology safety in a great level. So if you can a little bit tell us about these findings that we just received right now for the audience, you'll be fantastic. So Angela, can you move to the next slide, please?
So yeah, this is data from our global research, which has literally just been released in the last couple of weeks. One of the correlations or one of the dimensions we wanted to explore this year was the correlation between psychological safety and loneliness at work. So the question that was asked here is, how often do you feel lonely at work? And you can see that goes down from never, rarely, sometimes, often, always. And so the pattern that emerges is super obvious. I don't need to explain it to you. The more you don't feel lonely, you never feel or rarely feel lonely, the more psychologically safe you feel. If you're always lonely or often lonely, then you can see there's a huge drop in the score of psychological safeties. And even with sometimes, it's a significant drop from never and rarely. So loneliness is a key determinant. And I saw a question in the chat. So what can coaching do? Exploring loneliness. How does loneliness happen in an organization? How do you create by definition, organizations are groups of people coming together to achieve common goals, and yet we can create an environment where people always feel lonely, often feel lonely, or even sometimes feel lonely. By the time you add up those, it's a big percentage of the population that responded to this year's research. So loneliness is a significant contributor. We know there's correlation. We can't tell you which way round it is, whether it's psychological safety causing loneliness or the absence of psychological safety or vice versa. We have a hypothesis, but that'll be for this year's research.
Perfect.
The
Can you move to
second
the
one.
next one? Yeah, Angela?
So if you're talking to organizations about why they should invest in psychological safety, then this is a useful bit of data from the research. So this is this is a question where we asked, I am planning to search for a new job in the next 12 months. So you can see strongly staying, 82%, 82 score for psychological safety, planning to leave 52. So a 30-point gap between those people who are going to stay and those people who are going to leave. So 17% of the population are planning to leave or considering leaving. So that would suggest, again, there's a cost for the absence of psychological safety of staff turnover. And the beauty of this data is it gives you a chance to act. So psychological safety is something you can act on in real time, so you can change this picture. So the neutral figure is the one that we think is the most exciting in terms of things you could do to address this, because they haven't decided they're leaving, neither have they decided they're definitely staying. So, and that's a big number. That's something like 30% of the people who responded are in that space. So let's see if we can talk to them and work on psychological safety for those groups, which will make them more likely to stay. You'll remember one of the key findings of Project Aristotle: people who experience high psychological safety are less likely to leave. So staff turnover can be dramatically affected by increased psychological safety.
Perfect. And we can be proactive, right? Before
Yeah.
everything's can happen. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So, Angela, if you can move to the next slide, and then I will be a little bit quicker here, Scott, if you allowed me,
I'm
because the
watching the
time.
clock too.
Yeah. How can we help, right? And when I'm saying how can we help, and I'm saying on behalf of the Fields organization, SCAN, that also represent them here in Latin America. So if you can move with the next slide, Angela. Because of course we gave you guys a little bit about concept, right? And explain a little bit how everything works. Now it's how can you pick up this concept and implement in the organization as HR, as a coaching or leadership development professional. So we have two ways to do that. The first one is to do assessment about the psychology safety level in the organization, in the teams. This is very important. We do that with teams. So if you're doing in a coaching for group, for example, will be perfect for you, these two as well. And then we see not only the total level of the psychology safety that group has, but we will also see that the dimensions below of the psychology safety according Amy research. So the first one is the willingness to help. The second one is inclusion diversity. Then we have the attitude of risk and failure and the open conversation. And then if you want to know more that, you can go to our website and then explain a little bit the concept below of each of them. Because the time I will not be able to go too deep on that. But the assessment is fantastic because also compare this team with the benchmarking globally as well for each level, and then give you guys a vision and in a statistic way as well as a number. Not just a subjective information, it's very objective information that you can also compare a little bit more as past the months, right? And we do that with our clients. And then after that, we do a workshop where we planning the actions according the result. So it's very objective, very specific. You can measure that and compare with the global benchmark. If you go to the next slide, Angela, please, it's the second option that we can provide to you. We also can do the international certification for psychology safety on behalf of Fields organization SCAN. So Scott was my teacher and then now allowed me to do this course in Portuguese or in English, in Spanish for Latin America. So you guys can see that we have two groups now in June. If you are interested, you can send me a message as well by my email, WhatsApp, and then we can talk. So this is another option if you really want to go more deep about this topic. Okay. You can go to the next, Angela, please.
Tati.
So to finalize it here, this is an amazing slide that I love, this sentence that Dr. M is sharing, which is psychology safety is the soil, not the seed. And for me, this is explaining a very clear way our job as a coach, as a consultant, doing and implement the psychology safety in the organization. So thank you so much, Scott, for to be here with us. You were very kind, sharing the concepts and educated the audience. Thank you so much, ICF, on behalf of Rosangela, which give us this space. We hope that you guys enjoy it and learn a little bit. And of course, we are here for you for anything that you need, any doubt, any question. And if you can move, Rosangela, Angela, to the next slide, you guys can see our information if you want to talk with us. And about the research that Scott said, we will have a conversation on this Thursday at 6 p.m. Brazil time, because on 7 we have another colleague that will be here in the week of the international coaching. And that session will give you guys all the results about the survey that Scott just said now that we had. So you have the link there and you can access. It was a pleasure. I know potentially you have some questions, Rosangela, but I think because the timing, we can answer that after. I don't know how can you guys thinking about it.
Tati, eu queria interromper no seguinte, tem 3 perguntas excelentes, mas oficialmente nós precisamos encerrar, eu sei que as pessoas têm horário. Queria agradecer imensamente ao Scott e à Tati. Se vocês, quem tiver disponibilidade de ficar mais uns 5 minutinhos, eu vou fazer um papel chato, eu vou escolher uma pergunta. Eu fiz a formação junto com a Tati, num grupo aqui no Brasil, e a pergunta que mais veio, e eu vou me tomar a liberdade de escolher, é sobre a cultura, né? Se a cultura influencia na segurança psicológica. E, então, foi a Cris que fez, hein, Cris? Você está aqui. Ela está em inglês.
I just want to understand if the culture of a country can impact the psychological safety, because in hierarchical cultures, for example, Asian cultures, you cannot challenge the boss. So this is not safe for you to say what you think. So I don't know if you have like this information.
Yes, we have. Scott, do you want to talk it? Yeah, of course.
No, it's a really important point you're making that depending on the overarching culture, then the hierarchical, the importance of the boss and the gap between people who work for them, it's far more referential. We look up to our bosses, we don't challenge them. However, even in that culture, there is still psychological safety. There's still what's acceptable and permissible. And so what we find is that within different cultures, people self-calibrate. Yeah. So the norm, we ask the questions, but the norm is set by the culture. So interestingly, when we look globally, there isn't that much difference across multiple cultures. It's something we're really interested in exploring over a longer period of time, get more data and more feedback. But what appears to happen is that each culture normalizes their own data, and then that settles down to this is what psychological safety looks like, and that can be quite independent of culture. Sorry, my voice is beginning to go. The question that was asked was about coaching. How can coaching help as well? Was that?
Yeah, I asked that too. Yeah.
Sobre a cultura, se fazia diferença na organização, dependendo do nível cultural, se isso interfere na segurança psicológica. Mas acho que você, dentro do tempo que a gente tem, acho que você deu pelo menos alguma pista, né? E essa foi uma temática que apareceu demais nas nossas discussões aqui no Brasil, né, Tatiana?
Yes, it is, and I can explain that more in detail. No problem at all. But just to finalize it, who did this question and increase is depends of really the answer you'll be provided by the team. So even the country has a culture, and if this team has a great level of psychology safety, potentially the culture of the country not necessarily will impact the psychology safety of the team, right? So that's how we are seeing in the survey. But as Scott said, we need to go deeply even more in this topic, but this is the information that we get it so far. And of course, the coach can help the organization using the concepts of the psychology safety within the organization, and potentially doing the assessment as we explaining as a tool to help that and navigate it. Okay. I hope that I was able to answer.
Ok.
So thank you very much.
Tem mais perguntas? Quem depois quiser me mandar, ou mandar para a gente nas redes, a gente encaminha para a Tatiana e respondemos vocês. Queria mais uma vez agradecer demais o Scott, que mesmo com os desafios da saúde, está com a gente, a Tatiana e a presença de todos vocês. Lembrando que agora às 11 horas teremos um painel, um case empresarial muito interessante sobre liderança, coach e segurança psicológica. E à noite nós teremos uma palestra também imperdível, que é Amplifying Presence, com o Dan Croft, que foi o campeão das inscrições. Convidamos vocês para estar conosco e muito obrigada mais uma vez.
Rô, só um minutinho. Nós colocamos o link correto para CCUs e avaliação aqui tá no chat. E quem quiser, tá tudo corretinho agora aqui para vocês pegarem, tá bom?
Ok. Então,
Obrigada a todos.
até o próximo encontro.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigada, Tati,
Thank you.
Scott.
Obrigada,
Parabéns.
pessoal.
Muito bom.
Ótimo.
Thank you.
Tchau, tchau.